everyone, I am Kiran Joshi. Hope you all are safe and sound. Here's the second video of class 7 history chapter 4, the Mughal Empire. Children, in the previous video of this chapter we learnt about various military campaigns of Mughals. You must have noticed that there were conflicts for the succession of the empire. Actually, the Mughals did not follow the rule of primogeniture. Children, primogeniture is the exclusive right of the eldest son to inherit his father's estate. So, the Mughals believed in and followed the Mongol and Timurid custom of coparcenary inheritance. In coparcenary inheritance uh, is the system in which the inheritance or the estate is divided amongst all the sons. It is also noticeable that the Mughal rulers campaigned against those rulers who did not accept Mughal authority. But later, when the Mughals became more powerful, many other rulers themselves joined them willingly. For example, the Rajputs. Many Rajput rulers married their daughters into Mughal families. For example, the mother of Jahangir was a Kachwaha princess. She was the daughter of the Rajput ruler of Amber. This is modern day Jaipur. The second example is Shah Jahan's mother. She was a Rathore princess, daughter of the Rajput ruler of Marwar, Jodhpur. So, such rulers got high positions in Mughal Empire. However, there were some rulers who refused to accept Mughals authority for a long time, such as Sisodia Rajputs of Mewar. But when they were defeated, the Mughals treated them with honor and gave their lands as assignments or jagirs. Through the policy of defeating their opponents but not humiliating them, rather treating them honorably, the Mughals were able to influence many kings and chieftains. Though this policy of careful balancing was not possible all the time. For instance, you learnt in the first video of this chapter that Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji and humiliated him. This insult had very disastrous consequences. Now, you have also learnt in the first video of this chapter that in their military campaigns, the Mughals seized and captured many different places and thus the empire expanded to different regions. Therefore, they appointed diverse people that included not only Turkish nobles, that is Turanis, but also Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs, Marathas and other groups. They all were known as Mansabdars. Now, what is Mansabdar? So, Mansabdar means a person who holds a mansab or a position or rank. The Mughals used a grading system to fix rank, salary and military responsibilities of a Mansabdar. The rank and salary of a Mansabdar was fixed through a numerical value called Zat. If the Zat was higher, it meant that the noble's position in the court was more prestigious and his salary too was larger in proportion. In his military responsibilities, the Mansabdar had to maintain a definite number of Sawar or cavalrymen. The Mansabdar brought his cavalrymen for review, got them registered, their horses branded, then received money to pay salary to his Sawar or cavalrymen. This was about Mansabdar's military responsibilities. Now, let us see what was the system for Mansabdar's salary. So, the salaries of Mansabdars were in the form of revenue assignment called Jagirs. These Jagirs were quite similar to Iktas, which you learnt in the chapter 3 Delhi Sultans. But Iqtadars or Muktis administered their Iktas, while Mansabdars did not live in or administer their Jagirs. The revenue collection of their Jagirs was done by their servants and the Mansabdars served in some other part of the empire. During the rule of Akbar, These Jagirs were assessed very carefully so that the revenue collections were almost equal to the salary of Mansabdars. But this system could not be continued by the Aurangzeb's rule, and most of the time the actual revenue was less than the granted sum. Moreover, the number of Mansabdars also increased, and therefore they had to wait for a long time to receive a Jagir. Thus, a shortage in the number of Jagirs was felt. As a result, many Jagirdars tried to exploit their Jagirs as much as they could to get maximum revenue, and Aurangzeb could not control this in the last years of his reign. Actually, the peasantry suffered extremely due to this exploitation. Now, tax on the cultivation or on produce of the peasantry was the main source of income of Mughal rulers. The peasants paid their taxes through the village headmen or the local chieftains. These rural elites and other intermediaries all were termed as zamindars. Akbar's revenue minister Todarmal carried out a survey for a 10-year period from 1570 to 1580. In this survey, crop yields, prices and areas under cultivation were surveyed carefully. Then on the basis of this survey, tax was fixed on each crop in cash. Each province was divided into revenue circles, and each revenue circle had its own schedule of revenue rates for individual crops. This system of revenue was called Zabt. This Zabt system of revenue was in practice in those areas where Mughal administrators could survey the land and keep very careful accounts. But in provinces like Gujarat and Bengal, this Zabt could not be carried out. In some areas, the zamindars were very powerful, and when the Mughal administrators tried to exploit them, these zamindars rebelled against them. Sometimes these zamindars also got support of the peasants of same caste in the rebellion against Mughal authority. From the end of the 17th century, these peasant revolts created a challenge for the Mughal Empire to remain stable. That's all for this part of the chapter. Now look at the questions from the topic covered in this video. The first question is, who all formed the Mughal nobility? Second, what were the responsibilities of the Mansabdars? Third, how did the Mansabdars get their salaries? Fourth, who were zamindars? What were their duties? Fifth, what was Zabt? That's all for this video. Hope you liked it and found it helpful for you. Thank you, children.